Hello, everybody. I think we are live. So welcome to the office hours for OMS-CS 6300. So I'm on a different time zone this week, so here is actually midnight. So hopefully I won't pass out. Otherwise, I'm sure Will and Erin will be able to kind of step in and probably do a better job than I could do at this hour, anyways. So I'm gonna let people connect. I'm gonna let Will and Erin, as usual, say hi and give you an update.
Sorry for missing last week, folks. We had storms come through here just as I was connecting, and all of a sudden I could not get connected. I just got the little spinny thing and it never would connect. So I apologize. I did try, but I'm here this week. I can hear the rousing chorus of apathy right now.
I'm sure it was just so he can have plausible denial that my cat skipped an office hours.
Right.
Yeah. A2 was released as well, so you should be able to see those grades on T-Square. If you're looking for comments, always look in the assignments page for this class, not the gradebook page.
Okay. Any other announcements from you guys? Okay, so in this case,
we're working on 3.
Yeah.
Don't have any, I mean, just preliminary getting to work on 3, so it's not going to be anytime soon. Okay,
and 3 is, I guess, mainly auto-graded, except for the fact that we'll need to check manually the comments for the test. So that's a part that takes some time. So this week is assignment 4, the simple Android app, and we're on week 4 of the class. And next week we're going to have 2 assignments. One is actually really not an assignment, but just more like a very quick thing that you have to do for the project. So the first thing is that the real assignment is the software design assignment, in which you'll have to design a system. And in addition, you'll have to add your contact information to the group repository. So basically, we will release the group information, so the team information, so you will know which team members are with you on the team for the project, and we will give you a Git repo for the team, and you'll have to provide your contact information in this Git repo. And I think that's it in terms of announcements. And so I'm just gonna go and look at the questions for the office hours. Okay, first question. Will our submission be run against any style checkers as part of the grading? And the answer is no. So we're not gonna check any, the style or the code. And so it just has to work. Can you share some common pitfalls, oversight that previous classes have had with the Android assignment? So I guess, I don't know if it can, I guess it can still happen. So one big problem that we had a couple of semesters ago was the fact that people made mistakes with the identifiers, and so therefore, all of our tests were failing. But I think, now with the new settings, that should not happen anymore. But I'm going to let, Erin kind of step in, because she's much younger than me and she's got a better memory. So I'm sure she can remember what the major mistakes were in previous semesters.
Well, it shouldn't happen that they make errors with the identifiers, because we've given them a file that shouldn't compile if the identifiers don't exist in the project. I wouldn't count on that to catch every sort of error, but it really should help prevent a lot of typos, so long as you keep everything in the package names that we give you. It will not check your error messages. Those are just a string. Those aren't going to stop anything from compiling. So do be careful with those. Beyond that, a lot of it, I think a lot of people spend time setting up Android and just really getting everything running on this assignment. We've really eliminated some of the possible sources of error, I think.
Yeah, and I think the main, at least those main kind of trivial errors should not be there anymore. And I guess, well, then there's the usual mistakes, like, wrong commit, but I think those are kind of standard for all assignments. So there's really no pitfalls. This is like for last weekend, this is not really, shouldn't really be a complicated assignment. So the main goal for this assignment is really for you to be able to run Android Studio and create an Android project and run an Android project, so that then we'll do the project based on Android. You won't have that kind of issue, so you'll be already kind of up to speed with that part, and you won't have any problem with it. So that's really the main goal. So you really shouldn't have any major issue with this, and it's not a tricky assignment in any way. Okay, next question. Are there any test frameworks that provide nice, concise results for Android tests? For example, expected 1, 2, 3, actual 4, 5, 6. Espresso Android JUnit output a lot of information along with the expected and or actual. So Espresso is actually the one I'm familiar with. I know that there's other frameworks, but I don't know whether they will provide a more concise output. And I think with Espresso, I don't know if you can actually write the test so that you have a more concise output. Probably not. So I think you probably have to live with that. But there might be things I don't know about the other frameworks. So if other students know about it and they want to provide some information about that, then please feel free to follow up to respond to these questions and to see.
I've seen a couple examples poking around with the Espresso test on overriding the handler for the failed test to provide the information you're looking for, but I haven't tried that extensively. It's possible it might give better information that way.
Okay, and as I said, sorry, go ahead.
It's a little more complicated though to do that.
Okay, so let me see the next question. What font, screen size, orientation will the submission be tested against? Do we have to account for these things? My UI looks fine in portrait mode, but not so much in landscape. As I think I responded on Piazza, I don't think it was a private post. But anyways, just don't use a humongous font, because I mean, if you use a very big font, it could be that then your code is being tested on a smaller one, and there might be issues. So pick any kind of regular font. The Nexus 5 is a good bet because it's a fairly small one. So if things look fine on that one, that will be fine. And don't worry about the landscape mode. So we will be testing this in portrait mode. So that's not something you have to worry about. So Erin, anything to add on that?
Not really. I got the impression on Piazza some people really wanted exactly which ABD and everything down to the small specifications of what we would test against, but we really can't because they tend to be a little particular on the computers they're running on, so that we might have tweaked some specs to make it run better on our system, but they should all be pretty generic Nexus setups with the API 19 as the minimum.
Right. Okay. Let me see. I'm receiving some messages. I want to make sure that there's not some students having problems connecting. No, seems like this is working. Okay. Let me get to the next question. Any suggestion for handling a really long input message? For the result message, should the output scroll vertical, scroll horizontal, wrap, in which case it will spill over the top part of the UI? I assume most, if not all, of the grading will be automated. So does any of the above even matter, as long as you can programmatically read the output and match your expectations? Sorry for the onslaught of questions, but I see many potential gotchas, and while I don't want to be penalized for missing any of those, I also don't want to go overboard and do unnecessary things either. No, I mean, it's perfectly fine. The questions, they're all reasonable. So yeah, don't worry about it. As I said, we're not going to try to kind of catch, weird errors, so we're not going to test with long text or so. It's do anything that you think is reasonable for the test. You can also not worry about it at all. We're going to be testing the code with relatively short messages, so I just wouldn't worry about it, basically. As I said, the main goal for this is not to have a perfect system, but to have a system that works and to get you really started with Android Studio and Android development.
I would say somebody asked about limiting it to like 12 characters or something in another thread, And that's probably too short because that doesn't even accommodate the tests we gave them. So don't don't make it that minuscule. You really don't need to, and you don't need to worry too much about it being like super pretty. It does need to work manually because some of your projects will probably break the auto grading. So a TA might have to look at yours. They need to be able to read it. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to look perfect with the wrapping and everything, but it has to be able to be used.
Okay, now the next question is, the identifiers are quite specific for the assignment, but what about data types? Will it matter if result message is a text view versus an edit text, etc., as long as the ID is correct? That's a good question. I don't think it matters as long as we can call the right methods on those, but I'll have to double check the test cases. Erin, do you remember whether
those particular ones are pretty forgiving? And the only one I think that I needed to know what type it was the radio button, and so I specified that.
Okay, perfect. I have a git add -a for under dir assignment 4. Can you please verify this is correct? This seems to make the most sense since it carries the full project and related dependencies. Verify, thanks. Okay, so rather than us verifying, because as you can imagine, even though we would be happy to do that, but imagine if all the students were to ask us to verify their commit, that would be kind of a major amount of work. So what I recommend is that you just try to log out, to check out the code from a different directory and try to see what you get. If that works for you, then you'll be fine. The only thing you should make sure of is that you don't add files that are the files that should not be on Git. It really should not matter. So even if you add everything, it really shouldn't matter. But just for as a sanity check, check out the code from a different directory and see whether you can import the project and run it, and then that means they'll be fine. And as I said, we can also check on our side, but I'm just concerned that we might not get to that on time. We might hold you up. So I think it's really much easier if you just go and do it and make sure that that works. And don't worry about the fact that if you have extra files, that should not be an issue. Are there any usability requirements that are unset for the assignment? What it means is, will you be checking our program out by hand? And what if it ends up being on a screen site that we did not design for? It sounds like the grading would be done strictly by automated scripts, so maybe it's not a matter of concern. Yeah, it is really not a matter of concern in the sense that we will be running automated tests on the code, and we won't be, we're not looking for the perfect UI for any kind of specific UI design. Once more, this is mainly really getting your feet wet with Android development. So we won't be picky in any way with style, interface, and so on, as long as, of course, the code works. The assignment instructions say to use text view error messages. That does mean that the error message has to be attached to the text view widget, or since edit text inherits from text view, is it technically still considered a text view error message, even though it's attached to the edit text widget? This is a, yeah, go ahead.
It's a link, like where it says text view error message, it's a blue underlying link that goes to a page in the Android descriptions that's called that. It's not meant to say what type of widget it's attached to necessarily. Okay,
so as long as you follow the instruction, I guess, on the link,
yeah,
that you'll be fine, basically. Okay.
Right. It gives them exactly the command they need to set the error message. It should work on either the text view or the edit text. And I mentioned how they should be calling the same sort of function on the radio button as well.
Okay, perfect. Let me just reload to make sure that I have the latest version. Yeah, I was missing one question, in fact. Okay, is screenshot 1 in the assignment correct? I will think that decode 5 cat dog 1 2 3 smiley will result in XUO. Maybe I won't read the whole thing, so I don't look completely silly. But I think there's a typo, and the V was supposed to be a U, and there's a follow-up that says seems to be correct. It has V, not U, and it's true. So it's actually a V, because if you do the math, it's like basically V. So it's like W, X, Y, Z, A. So that's a V. If you had a U, then you will have a Z instead of the A as the second letter. So this is correct. I don't know if it's a matter. I mean, I was mentioning to Erin before that in Italy, for example, we don't have we have only 21 letters in the alphabet, so sometimes it's easy for us to get the order wrong for the extra letters. So I don't know, maybe that's a similar case, but at any rate, I confirm that this is correct. Okay, 2 questions. Are we supposed to commit .idea files and Gradle script to, or just the app directory inside SDP cipher? So I think that, I don't remember if we put it in the assignment or not, but anyways, it's perfectly fine to commit .idea files. It's also perfectly fine not to commit them. Some TAs, I guess, like the fact of having everything there because they can import the project. When I have to do this, I normally just copy the files over. And I think, I mean, I don't remember how much we changed the autograder since my first version, but I think initially it didn't matter because we were just copying basically the SDP, the files under SDP cipher into a different, into our basically skeleton, and we were running them there, so it really didn't matter. I'll let Erin comment on this in case she changed something in the auto. Actually, 3 people I think worked on the autograder, so I don't remember if in the latest version we relied, but I'll be surprised if we relied on the .idea files. Erin?
No, the ID files they don't matter that much, but really I'd rather see them commit too much than not enough if you're not sure about any of those files. I think we probably do need the Gradle in some cases because some of them will include like extra libraries or things in there.
Oh yeah, that's right. If you have that's right. If you have extra libraries, then you need a Gradle. Otherwise, I mean, we have a standard Gradle that will work. So yeah, I guess Erin has a point. When in doubt, unless it's painful to do, just feel free to commit also the project files. Worst case scenario, we won't use them. But at any rate, also take into account, consider the fact that if something were to be not to work, for example, because you need a special Gradle file and it's not there and there's one missing library, we will work with you. Of course, it's better if it doesn't happen because that slows down the grading. Otherwise, we will work with you to fix the issue. So we won't be that we won't give you a 0 because of the fact that there's one missing library or anything like that. So commit if you can more than commit the project if you can. If you don't, it should be fine. And if something is missing, as long as it's not one of the files that are part of the solution, then we can fix that problem as well. Oh, there's a second question, right? I model shift number box as a numeric box, so it brings out only the numeric keyboard. Is that okay? Yeah, that should be fine. Sometimes with the automated test, we had some issues in case we were checking for some behavior, but I don't know if this can happen in this case. Can it?
It was in previous tests, we would make them do an error on negative numbers, and then people would use boxes that couldn't have negative numbers. This one, that's not the case because their upper and lower bounds are positive numbers, and there wasn't a different error for letters or anything like that. So yeah, all the tests we have should probably go in any reasonable sort of data type that you use, and the numbers are fine.
Okay, perfect. And next question. Mark this as result. Okay, a series of questions. Mean number of letters for string to be valid. Handout says must contain some characters. So I guess this is for the translation for the input part. I don't know if you remember off the top of your head. I'm gonna check the assignment just in Erin.
One letter should be fine. It says it must contain some letters, basically.
Not empty, must contain some letters.
Yeah, don't. If your input and your output are exactly the same, that's not valid.
Sorry, you were saying?
If your input and output are the same because it's all empty or special characters, that's not valid.
Okay, okay. But basically, as long as you have one, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so long as you have at least one letter.
How to handle super long strings that might not fit the display? Don't worry about it. We won't test it that way. So if you really want to be thorough, and you'll find a way, please feel free. But otherwise, don't worry about it. Should conversions always? Sorry, Chico, sono su un video con gli studenti. Sorry. Should conversion always retain case? And I guess so, right? Because we're just modifying, we're just shifting, so that really shouldn't matter. Sorry for the interference. Where does the encode group identifier get utilized? Encode group identifiers get utilized. Let me see the picture. So, Erin.
It's just the radio button group that will hold the two radio buttons. You're probably going to need that in your UI setup. And I'm not certain if we're going to validate that it's there on any of the tests. It's not like output in and of itself. It's mostly a UI element. You can see there's a square drawn in the picture because it's not visible externally. That should help you figure out how to get the radio buttons on there and related to each other.
Max API target to simulate against. So the max API target, I guess, I think I was mentioning it in a previous response, not in the office hours, but on Piazza. Just don't go for the kind of experimental versions or anything like that. So that's, we're not going to use anything, any bleeding edge version. So as long as you are, I guess, 19, it's probably a safe bet for the minimal one. We won't, don't worry about simulating against higher APIs. Any unit testing? Yes, we will have unit testing to test the code, but we're not going to give you those in advance. And sorry, I think the question here is that whether you should write any unit testing, or if you do, it's highly appreciated. So if you want to write, if that's a question, and if you want to write unit test, please do. My area is testing, so I always like to see tests, but by no means you have to do it. So it's not a requirement. It's something, if you want to do it, you're welcome to do it, but don't feel like you have to. So I would imagine you have to test it in some way, but I think you can do it manually, unless you want to have fun and try to use either. I don't know if we put barista in the instructions this time. I don't remember whether we have it.
I think barista is usually mentioned in the group project.
Yeah, it's just in the group project. We don't have it here. So we have a tool that can also be used to automatically record test cases, but we're not mentioning it here yet. So if you want to write test case, you'll have to write them manually on using Espresso or some other Appium or some of the other frameworks. So your call, and again, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Okay, there's a follow-up. If radio buttons don't belong to a group, then you will be able to select both radio buttons, which will be weird and not desirable. If you're looking for a behavior where clicking on one radio button will not select the other radio button, if you will select the radio buttons must be part of the group. Hope this helps. So that's actually a help and a kind of a response to Q4. Why do you need a radio button, a group? Because of the fact that you want the behavior of the radio buttons to be correlated. So you want to have only, when you put them in a group, only one can be activated at the time. I don't know if there's an option to in the group where you can have more than one, but normally that you would use the group that way. How do apps get tested in real world? That's a very good question. So actually, I can answer that one. So it depends. It depends. So in many cases, it's manual. In some cases, it's automated in the sense that there are scripts that are written and then are used for regression testing. And there's also cases in which are kind of more experimental, but I'm trying to think whether I can talk about it or not. Well, it's an ongoing project, so it's not something we are doing personally, but colleagues of mine are doing. But basically, they're trying to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, in order to be able to automatically test games, so apps that are games. So it's a fairly interesting approach, because you basically have the score that is the guiding, is the utility function, is your target, and what tells you whether the operations you're performing are good or not. And based on that, the system is learning how to play, which is kind of it's pretty cool. So kind of and that's really nice technology. But I would say normally nowadays we talk to a lot of people who do app testing. There's a lot of manual work. And like manual testing and then checking, or more recently, frameworks like Espresso. Radio button group is needed, but does it have to be named encode group unless this identifier is used elsewhere? I'm not sure. Erin, do you? Well, so it has to be. So that has to be the identifier, but I don't know what you mean unless it's used somewhere else.
I guess they're meaning that they're not referencing it in their code, but it is in that check file. So I think if you include the file we gave you, it won't compile without something named that.
Right.
Unless I missed putting that in there, which I don't think so. So you really should call it that. At this point, I'm not sure that our tests will actually need to refer to that, but I'm still checking on one of our grading tests. So I would just use the identifier we've given you.
Okay, so another question. For set error for radio buttons, attaching the error after the last radio button does not make the error show up in the correct place. Message will not show correctly as well. So I made up an extra edit text object with null input type. Is it okay?
It's not going to pass any of the automated tests.
Yeah.
That, because that's an error on a totally different object. Now, there were some threads about the message is on these type of errors only pop up for whatever field is in focus. So you probably don't have the radio button in focus, but that's okay. You should see a little exclamation mark, just like in the screenshots, right after the error you've attached it to, if you've attached it correctly. That screenshot was made with that set error function, so it should look pretty much like that.
Okay, let me see if any other question pops up. Okay, nothing seems to be there, so let's see if we have something else that we can add on the assignment. But this, it should be actually a fairly easy one, and Erin this time had a good idea. In previous semesters, we'll always had something with some sort of mathematical operations, and interestingly enough, rounding operations always ended up being a major nightmare, because it's when you have an operation that involves like 3 or 4 steps, and you can run the different stages. Then we ended up with kind of interesting cases that students doing some things slightly different. So this time, finally, she had the great idea of removing mathematical operation and rounding. So I think that's going to help a lot, eliminating many of the issues. So hopefully this will be fairly straightforward, because as I said, don't worry about special cases, don't worry about corner cases. It's as long as you follow the instructions and you build the app and the way it's described, you should really have no problem in passing the assignment and having a kind of a completely working assignment. Okay, so I guess there's nothing else to add. The only thing I will ask Will is, in terms of the teams, we're almost done, right?
Yes, I am tweaking the last few teams. The automatically generating teams that have match in the ways that we want them to match is really good for the first 95%, and the last 5% is a huge lot of manual work to make sure everybody is as well matched as we can. And that's where we are right now, is the manual step. So once I get that done, I'll get the repositories created, and probably tomorrow evening you will see your groups, your teams.
Okay, and you will get your repos, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Then since there's no more questions, I guess we can close here. Just one last note, which is since I'm going to be in Europe for another 3 weeks, if I'm counting correctly. So it might be that for the next 3 weeks, I might try to have the office hours slightly earlier. So maybe at 5:30. We're always talking about Atlanta time, 5:30 or 5, and we'll see. But I'll announce it in advance, so hopefully people can still participate. And I think that's pretty much it. So let me do one last check on Piazza. Looks like there's no new questions. Let me also do a refresh. Do you guys see any new questions?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. Then in this case, goodbye, everybody. Thank you for participating in the office hours. And I will see you next week on Piazza. And we'll see you next week. I see you can tell that it's late. Next week on for the office hours and on Piazza before that. Bye-bye.
So long, everyone.
Bye. And I think we